What's going on, guys? It's Danny from Slow Restoration, and today we're not in the big shop, but we're in actually the house garage where the Turbo GMC is chilling here. We are working on a 2012 Jeep JK. You may have seen this Jeep on a couple other videos. We did a fair amount to it, but today we're actually putting front chromoly axle shafts in. These are new U-joints. We have to assemble them and then disassemble the front end. If you've never did this job, there's quite a bit to disassemble, but let's go ahead and get the axles put together and then we'll pull the front wheels off. So we have all of our parts laid out here. We have our axle stubs, we have our two shafts, and obviously if you look at this, it is offset, so that's the reason behind a long and a short axle shaft. So the first thing we have to do, like I said, is assemble these. We have our U-joints. We have our clips that go in these little grooves here. Keeps those U-joint caps in the axle shaft. So let's go ahead and get started on that. You do have to be gentle when you do this. First thing you're going to do is pull two of the caps off of the joint itself, the U-joint itself. And then we're actually going to take, see if I can get you held up here. We're going to take the axle stub and the U-joint itself. There are no grease fittings in here, so we don't have to worry about them oriented. And by the way, these are Dana Spicer U-joints, if anyone has a question. So we're going to actually just kind of position that through, just like that. We'll turn it upside down. And then we'll take one of these caps and start it in the axle, and then we'll push our U-joint back down through and line that up. The biggest thing in doing this, let me show you here before we get too far, is inside these caps is a bunch of needle rollers, and it's very easy to knock them out. If you knock them out and get one sideways in the bottom of there, you'll never get this fully together correctly. You'll have it either won't go together, so you can't get your snap rings, or you'll have a premature failure. So we can actually take and line this U-joint right up. We'll put that cap back down in through there. It's not going on. Oh, just like that. We actually knocked one off trying to get it. I was fumbling around making sure the camera angle was right. So if you do, then just take and make sure before you go any further that these are all in place here. It's not the end of the world if you knock them over. You just don't want to be prying and or pressing on these if they're not in their groove. So now we have that back in there. We can grab this stub again, and this time we're actually going to start it before we even go. See, it goes on nice and smooth that way. And with that lined up, we actually have a dead blow hammer here, but it's got soft caps on it, so we don't mar this up. We're gently going to tap that down. It sounds like we're hitting it harder than we are. So we're getting that lined up. As you can see, that cap is going right in. We want to keep going until this is flush, or our snap ring groove comes through the inside of the axle there. So we got a little ways to go yet. So now we are flush with the end here, and that'll give us enough room to get that other cap started. Same deal. We'll get that lined up and make sure we have it. We can pull it off of this one a little bit, push it through so that we can get this started just like that. We'll keep those centered in there, and we'll tap this cap down. And you want to make sure works nice and smooth. We have a little bit further to go on each one of these so we can get the snap ring groove. Let me make sure you can see me here. You can see the snap ring groove is just sticking out. We need to go a little bit more on each side here, and then we'll pop the snap ring grooves on. We have our snap ring here. We have this one far enough through. We can actually line that up, and we'll set that on a block of wood. You don't want to damage these splines or any of the surfaces here. And again, we're just going to kind of tap that right on. You can hear it click into place. So that one is far enough in, and it is now secured with that snap ring. So what we'll do is we'll now tap on this one. That'll center all this up and get access to put the other snap ring on this side. We got that all put together. This isn't a video on how to install the U-joint, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it. This can be a pain. These are very tight tolerances, and these are aftermarket axles, so pretty much they have a locking snap ring on either side. You press through, just make sure the roller bearings don't fall as you're doing it. A little trick is this is a pitman arm puller, but it also fits on there pretty nice. And if you take a spacer, or I used a nut in between so the point isn't hitting, it's a nice easy way to get that last little bit so you can get your snap ring in there. Once you get these pressed together, you can take and tap it back and forth just so it moves nice and freely. It should move freely both directions, smooth and free. You can use this in the vise too, but it's very easy to damage these in the vise. I've seen guys actually collapse the ends of the axle pressing these together because you're pressing on here, and doing it this way you're actually pressing right on that cap per ear here on the axle. So whatever way you need to, like I said, this isn't a video about installing a U-joint, so let's go ahead and get this wheel removed, and we'll get further into installing these chromoly axles into this JK. And with that wheel off, we have the steering wheel also cut. We're gonna remove this bolt, and there's another bolt right here. They look like probably 21 millimeter. I'll let you know in a second, but that's the caliper mounting bracket. So we'll remove those two bolts, and we'll take this whole caliper and mounting bracket and set it up out of the way. So we'll pull this whole assembly off and kind of set it to the side here. We should tie that up just so it doesn't fall or put any stress on anything. Next, we're going to go ahead and remove the brake rotor. We'll set that aside here. And we need to get this center axle nut off. And pretty much what we have to do is, well, not pretty much, we do have to remove this whole wheel bearing so we can get this old axle out. So we have the nut to take off here, and there is 3 bolts on the back side here. There's 1, 2, and 1 on the front to remove this whole wheel bearing. And there is a sensor wire here for your ABS sensor. With this center nut backed off, the 2 bolts for the wheel bearing on this side removed. It's a 13 millimeter 12 point. We're going to remove this last bolt on the front side here, and definitely keep some penetrating fluid around. Remember, it's a Jeep. It's probably been off-road. Everything's stuck, rusty. Doesn't really like to come apart. With those bolts taken out, we have the wheel straightened back out, but sometimes it can be easier to do with the wheel turned. We're going to tap. We are reusing these wheel bearings. They didn't have any play in them, and the customer didn't want to replace them at this time because they're still good. If you were replacing these wheel bearings, it would be a little easier because you don't have to worry about saving them. These wheel bearings will get stuck in this spindle pretty good. As you can see, everything's a little bit rusty. It's just kind of normal for the age, and you know, it's a Jeep. It goes off-road. So gently, I have a dead blow mallet here with soft faces on it. Gently tap that out. You might have to get a pry bar in between there. Try not to bend this shield up, and try not to hit too hard on it. Keep spinning that bearing around. But once you have that broke loose from the spindle, it's just a matter of sliding that off the end of the axle. Get you set up here so you can see, but like I said, just push on the axle and gently pull that off. The shield will come off the bearing. We did unclip our wires here so we have enough room. No need to totally disconnect that stuff if you're not replacing the wheel bearing. So we're actually just gonna position all this over on the side and tie it up so it doesn't fall if need be. But I think we can get it to stay there. Now, really the next step is to actually grab the axle. You want to be gentle. If we look in this inside here on the front, there is a seal at the axle at the differential. So if you're too rough, you can knock that seal loose, and what happens when you do that is you actually got to pull that cover off, pull the ring and pinion, or pull the carrier out and replace that seal. It can be a real pain. Definitely pulling it out's not such a big deal. It's putting it back in where you could really have issues. But either way, be gentle coming out and going back in. I'll set you back up here. And you're just pretty much gonna grab that axle, like I said, and pull it out at this point. You do have to wiggle a little bit, but once we get through, we can see the end of that axle is actually wet from the gear lube. Right there's where your seal rides, and there is a little kind of retainer here. It doesn't really hold anything in, it just helps support that axle. So we'll try and reuse that. And there's another piece here at the end. It's just kind of keeps larger debris out of the end of that axle tube there. We'll get that stuff swapped over, match this up, make sure our new axles are a match for the one we just took out. With the two axles laying side by side here, we can see they seem to match up. Overall length looks good. Surprising, these are, as you can see right there, at least they say on it, they are 4340 Chromoly axles, the new ones we're putting in. And the center is actually smaller, I guess just because it's a stronger steel. Regardless, we are going to try and reuse this little sleeve. I know will come off. These don't always come off, sometimes they break. There is, as you can see here, a ledge here. We don't have a new one to put on, so we're going to try and get this old one off. I was able to get this spacer, whatever you want to call this little filler piece, off the old axle. They are pretty flexible, so, and as you can see, it pushes on the new axle pretty easy. Just kind of keep rotating and pushing. Like I said, it's got some kind of flex to it. It's fine to, that's fine. It's on there now, and it'll kind of fill that gap between the axle and the tube so it doesn't get large debris in there. Same with this. We'll put this on, and that'll just help space that axle up as we're going in and line that seal up a little bit better. All right, I'm going to set you up there. We'll grab our new axle shaft here, and we'll go ahead and start feeding this through. Again, being very nice and gentle. We're going to try and keep it from dragging. So there is some trash on the inside of that tube. And push that through. Again, especially when you get towards the center, you don't want to just jam that in there. You could knock that seal out for sure. I feel we're already in the splines, so we are good there. And that's it. That axle is now fully seated in there. You can tell you can't turn it now. You could turn it, but you're going to turn the whole drive train. As you can see, the drive shaft's turning. So we are engaged there. Now we can go ahead and clean this mounting surface up, clean all this up, and put the wheel bearing back together and start reassembling this side. Once you have that back together, you're going to start these 3 bolts and draw them in evenly to get this bearing to draw in, tight against the knuckle, even. And then these 3 bolts get torqued to 75 foot-pounds. This center axle nut, which actually sets preload on your wheel bearing, is 100 foot-pounds. On this particular Jeep, double check your application. With that all torqued up, don't forget to put your wire back in its holders for your ABS sensor. Make sure all that's plugged back in. We'll clean, as always, clean your wheel bearing face here. We'll slip the rotor back on. Go ahead and get our caliper mounting bracket, caliper, the whole assembly here bolted back on, and we'll be done this side, ready to move to the next. And this side is going to be very similar. We'll go ahead and get the wheel off. Wheel nut. Caliper mounting bracket. Slip the rotor off. Those bolts removed and the bearing knocked loose. Again, be gentle with it if you're reusing this bearing. I would suggest, if you have any question, just go ahead and replace the bearings. Like I said, it will make this job faster. And if you're putting chromoly axles in there, you're probably looking to beef the front end up, and perfect time to do front wheel bearings at the same time. But let's go ahead and get this bearing off. We'll get the axle slipped out and get the new one popped in. With that old axle out, we're ready to put this side new axle in also. We did swap over that piece there. There's our new axles installed. Chromoly in this 2012 Jeep JK. All right, we got some bonus footage here. We are actually going to do a adjustable track bar. This is a rough country track bar. I'm not sure. I'll have to get the part number. But it is, again, for a Jeep JK, 2.5 inch to 6 inch lift, and it's a forged front track bar. And like I said, it is adjustable. There's the pinch bolts and the sleeve. So we'll go ahead and get our old one removed. It's a 21mm bolt at this end right there, and then one over here. This actually has the Falcon shock stabilizer, so we'll have to remove that and then pull that stud out at this end. We'll get the old track bar out, get this one adjusted to the same length, and we'll go ahead and get this installed. So we have this one removed. Like I said, it's a 21mm, nut on the back side, and you can see how floppy this is. This rod end on this bar is shot. So let's go ahead and get this other side. It's a pretty easy, straightforward job. If you don't have the aftermarket steering stabilizer on there, it definitely goes a little quicker, but either way. With this second side pulled out, like I said, this one has a stud, but if you don't have that aftermarket stabilizer, it will just be a bolt there. There is a, so we can grab it back here. There's a nut with a wing off the back so it doesn't spin, so you don't even need a wrench on that side. And we can just pull our old bar right on out here. I am doing this on the ground too, guys. I'd love to say it's just so I can show you it can be done, but we do have a job in the big garage on the lift, and this needed to get done. So either way, obviously you can very easily do this in your driveway, or if you do have a garage, even better. You don't need a lift for this. So this factory track bar actually worked good on this current setup, so we're just going to reinstall it back to the same width or the same length. So here's a quick, easy way of doing it. We put the bolt through both ends, so that lines this end up, and we'll just adjust this until we can slip this bolt into both sides also. And to adjust this adjustable track bar, it has a sleeve here, and we spin it one direction, it makes it longer. Obviously we spin it the other direction, it makes it shorter. And we're not quite there, but if we keep spinning this, I think we're real close now. Let's see if that'll slip through. Yep. So now we have our bolt through both ends at the same time. So we are restored back to the same dimensions as our track bar that was on there originally. While we're here side by side, you can see how much beefier that new piece is than the, I guess this is still the factory track bar, but you can see the beefs, how much beefier it is, heavier duty, and it's got larger diameter bushings also, in addition to being adjustable. So if you change your ride height, you really should adjust this, and what that does, this bar centers the front axle left to right under the vehicle. And going back together is just about as easy as coming apart. We put the bolt through, and again, in this case, it's a stud because of that Falcon shock, but we put the bar through, put that nut with the wing on it on the back, went ahead and get that started. And on this end, we'll just simply lift it up, line that hole in the frame up, and reinstall that bolt. The last step in this install of this track bar is to tighten these two clamps up right here. 5/8 inch nut and bolt. Go ahead and tighten them up. That locks that collar on there so you can't spin it, and it keeps its adjustment. Just make sure those clamps are spun to where it's not going to hit anything as it goes through its suspension travel. We're all clear there. We're all back together. Now we have our Chromoly axles and our rough country adjustable heavy duty track bar on there. So that's going to do it for this round of mods on this Jeep. He's ready to go back and hit the trails again. Thanks for stopping by. Have a good day.